Welcome to part 9 of the A to Z of property strategies with the delectable David Clouter.
Thank you so much. I thought you were going to say diabolical there for a minute. But let's be honest, we are the dynamic duo, aren't we? Which
We
one's
are
Robin
indeed.
and which one's Batman? I don't know. We'll leave that to you to tell us. Hey!
So we're on D's.
And we've reached two strategies now that have the word deal in the front of them. I'm going to do them in the reverse order to what they are there. I'm going to start with deal sourcing. I came across a fella, and there are a lot of these. Might have been a fella, might have been a lady. In this case, it was a fella who described himself as a deal sourcer. And what he was doing in the town that I was interested in investing in, city, in fact, is he was going on to Rightmove. Right? And he was finding a few properties that I'd seen about 3 weeks later, and then he was sending them on to me. This is not deal sourcing.
No.
And so whatever they tell you, this is just silly. This is deal silliness. Deal sourcing has to be, by definition, off market. It's about finding opportunities and getting them ready and passing them on to your investors that they can't find themselves, even if they spend a whole day on Rightmove, let alone 10 minutes, which I did with that fella. And the advantages for this, obviously, is off market, so you're not in competition with other people. You can come to some kind of agreement with the seller without worrying about being gazumped or gazundered or anything going wrong with it.
Yeah. Well, I think, to me, there's several important things on deal sourcing. Number one, you can pass somebody a lead for there is a Rightmove link or there is whatever. It's not worth more than £50 because you're not sourcing anything, you're just passing on a lead. There's then costing something up and doing a little bit of due diligence on it, which is worth a little bit more and probably worth £250. There is then deal sourcing, which is where you actually negotiate the deal as well on their behalf and put together a package, sorry, not a package, but put together an opportunity that you have sourced this deal. Now, the other thing that really gets under my skin is people go on a training course and they're told how to deal source. However, I've yet to find somebody who's brought me a deal that is actually a deal because they're not comparing an apple with an apple when they try and present something to you. They've got no clue about the cost of doing a refurbishment on a project. They're always over optimistic on what it will exit the market for or value out when a bank valuer walks in to value it. So I'm always very cautious of this as a strategy. And the final thing that I find most rude is within the established professional industry, there are some predefined commission rates for deal sourcing, which typically, if you go to the Estates Gazette and you looked at, say, Aldi or Lidl or somebody who, the supermarkets and businesses do exist, by the way, they will advertise, we are looking for sites and we will pay a finder's fee for a bona fide site of 1 or 2% of the site value. Therefore, you should only be paying a deal sourcer 1 or 2% of the value of that proposition, provided they have done all the stages of it. If they're just giving you a lead, an address, it's worth £50.
50 pence.
Yeah, £50.
So, and you know, these...
I'll get off my soapbox, by the way, now.
You're absolutely right. Oh, that means you shrink down like that, does it? But anyway, there's all these emails that come around. I'm subscribed to all of them now, which purport to show you deals and so forth, which simply are not. They're just not. And so it's misleading to imagine that somebody is going to send you all these if you diligence even one of them, you're going to find out that the value is wrong, which you can very easily find on Rightmove and Zoopla and all this kind of. The returns are wrong, the costs are underestimated, and this kind of thing. So I like to describe what you saw as strategy number 3. I like to describe that as deal packaging, which is to put the whole thing together nicely and give it to me all wrapped up in a bow and to make sure that it works and it's not just a pie in the sky. Flash in the pan.
Opportunity, and you must make sure that you as the buyer and you as the deal sourcer do your compliance and comply with regulatory requirements. Now, in the text below this video, I'll put a link to a blog that I did on 10 things to look for in your deal sourcer, which if you're a deal sourcer, make sure you're doing the 10 things that are there in that blog article. And that way you can make sure you are compliant.
That's a terrific idea. As we're going through all these, we think of lots of kind of spin-off things as well that we might do. And I think if there's any particular things that people would like us to drill down on that we've just briefly glossed over in passing, because as it is, it's going to take us nearly a year to go through all these, then do please let us know and we'll press pause and we'll try and... Don't you press pause.
No, put them in the comments box down below is what I'm saying. Put them in the comments below.
And, okay, so yeah, and off we go again.
So deal packaging.
Yes, absolutely. Defining your demographic is the next. So deal packaging was number 3. As you described it. Yeah. Defining your demographic. So you can't just go, oh, I'd want to do kind of some kind of property. Who are your clients? If you don't know who your clients are, then you're going to fail.
So if I bought a house, I couldn't rent it to a shop then?
That is a thing.
And we couldn't use it as an office?
That is a thing, isn't it, really?
Right. So what we're saying is we need to define who our target customer is for this property in order to buy the right properties that fit our strategy.
Absolutely so. And so even if we were just restricting ourselves for a moment to residential, are we letting to professionals? Are we letting to LHA? Are we letting to students? Are we letting to sort of middle-aged men who are divorced? Yeah, I mean, that's another strategy. They're very good tenants, actually. The old middle-class, middle-aged men who are divorced, and indeed.
We know somebody who majors on that strategy. They look for middle-aged men who've recently divorced or separated because they become tenants until they perhaps leave. Somebody carries them out.
Yeah, that's roughly the way it is, and whether they're being carried over the threshold or sort of carried out some other way, then but nonetheless they're in for quite a long time. Quite a long time, and get the demographic right and understand that demographics change. I think in one of the earlier videos we were talking about how appalling student digs were in the 1980s. They were really grim, let me tell you. And yet nowadays a lot of these are quite pristine, and the bar's been raised. So you also have to be aware of any market changes that might affect your demographics. If you've got your horrible kind of Rigsby type bedsit thing, and there's a nice shiny new build thing applying to your demographic right next door, you're going to wonder why you're empty. But the writing
is Rigsby compliant with his. With the 186 different regulations that us as landlords have to comply with, was he compliant?
That's a very good question. I think in today's market he'd probably be taken away in shackles. But very good show. If you've ever seen the old show Rising Damp with the very brilliant Leonard Rossiter, it's a very funny show, but it's a comedy and it's fiction, although it was a bit close to the mark in the 70s.
It was very funny. Do we have another D?
We've got 2 things. We've got delayed completion. Were we going to talk about that under D or further on in the alphabet?
I think delayed completion we can do now because that's a D, and I've done delayed completions.
Have you really?
I have indeed. And I bet you have too.
Funnily enough, I have. And now a delayed completion is when normally the time, there can be accelerated completions as well. We didn't do that under A, so we'll have to deal with that now as well. So the normal time when you're buying, say, let's say, for example, a residential property, you exchange contracts, so you put 10% in the escrow account. It doesn't actually go to the seller, although there was recently a case of somebody who was buying a property, which I think is somebody that you know, where the vendor did actually want 10% in a brown envelope or something stuffed in their pocket, but it had to go into the escrow account. And then you wait 28 days, and that 28 days allows people to get ready to move house and make arrangements for moving lorries and disconnecting the utilities.
The bank to wire the funds over and so forth.
And all that sort of stuff. And that's normally a 28-day window. But let's suppose, for example, that I'm about to buy a house and I've got quite a good price on it. Obviously, it's not below market value because there is no such thing, but it's quite a deal. And the problem is at the moment that nobody else wants to buy it really because there's no kitchen in it and there's no bathroom, and this makes it effectively unmortgageable. So no mortgage company will touch it. And at the same time, I'm right out of cash that day because I put all my savings on this horse in the Grand National that lost. So what on earth
That's
can
not
I
good.
do? What on earth can I do? Well, I've got a little bit left, which I'm going to put down as the 10% deposit, but I haven't got enough to buy this property. So I'll say, and this was much more readily accepted by solicitors back in the day. Nowadays, with a bit of persuasion, some will, but it used to be very, very common indeed that I would say, right, I'll give you 10% or 5% if I can get away with it, preferably.
A pound, even if you can.
Even if you're Andrew, then you can. And then I'll say, in the meantime, I will now immediately bring my workmen in and I will put in a kitchen and a bathroom. And they'll go, oh, that's going on. Well, I'll go, in the worst case scenario, if I pull out of the deal or whatever, and if anything goes wrong, you've got a kitchen and a bathroom where before you had a hovel, and you've got far more people that can buy it. And in the best case scenario, we proceed here, I get a mortgage and you get the best price. And so that would be one reason, for example, for delaying completion. Accelerated completion might be if your vendor's in a hurry. And you say, right, well, the house is already empty. Maybe it's a probate, something like that, and it's good to go. It's mortgageable. You can say, right, well, I'll let you have the mortgage in a week.
Yeah.
That would be hard to do via a bank, but you could use cash or bridging for those kinds of things. So there are times when the normal 28-day doesn't apply. A tip, if you're trying to accelerate the purchase and do one of these quick things, make sure that you know when your solicitors are going to be on holiday, and more importantly, which people don't do, when your vendor's solicitors are going to be on holiday, because there's nothing worse than finding the whole thing hanging because somebody's gone away and the casework is locked in their desk and nobody else can do it until they come back from the Maldives in 3 weeks' time. So because timing is of the essence, shall we say, to use a bit of legal parlance, do drill down and double check that and make absolutely sure.
Yeah. Well, on the delayed completion, I mean, something for those of you out there who are trying to work out what's David on about, it's where you ask your solicitor for an extended time period to do those works. And your solicitor, first thing I would say is don't try and use a conveyancing warehouse, because the conveyancing warehouses, they have standard contracts, standard processes. And if you say, can I have a key undertaking to undertake some works? They've never heard of that, because generally speaking, they're not qualified solicitors. Often they're not even qualified conveyancers. They have a script on screen of buttons, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, which filters them down. So don't use a conveyancing warehouse, and make sure that the other side is also not using a conveyancing warehouse, because it makes it very difficult for you to do. And you'll need to provide them with a schedule of works. Now, your schedule of works, the more detailed and prescribed you can be in terms of what it is that you're going to do and how long it's going to take, helps your solicitor to put that into a legal contractual framework to the other side, and the other side to accept it, because they can see that you are professional in the way that you are approaching things. Just say, can I have 6 months to put a kitchen, bathroom, and perhaps a conservatory on the back? They'll go, who are you? And why? And what? And who are your builders? And what type of works is it? And what's it going to cost? And where are you getting the materials from? And have you got the money? And you'll end up with a mire of questions. The more professional you are, the easier it is.
Absolutely so. And we move on to our next strategy. And 56 days, for example, might be a typical exchange for delayed completion cycle, as one that I've used quite a bit.
Well,
Now,
I've done it over 7 months.
Oh,
so
diabolical!
And it was interest-free on the vendor. Shh, don't tell the vendors.
That's another secret we mustn't divulge. Now, here's a secret. This is not, the next one that the strategy that I'm going to describe is not, as far as I know, from the Kama Sutra. And it's called delayed gratification.
Well, I watched a movie at the weekend, and it was a psychological experiment where they put donuts that were stale out and told adults that they would bring new donuts into the room if they could wait half an hour to an hour. And it was quite interesting to see how many people could not wait and went and munched on a stale donut.
I would have polished off all the stale donuts on that table, to be honest, but some of us have willpower.
There you go. It's a delayed gratification.
Now, that is to do with basically the way that one of my favoured business models works, which will come along when we do the letter N, net cash flow reinvestment, is that £1 that you put in now is worth maybe £7 or £8 in say 7 or 8 years time, which is terrific. So if I can forestall buying that new donut today and eat the old stale one, I've got to soak it in some water first. Okay, so look, let's not be too over the top about this. If I can wait ever so slightly, turn down the heating to and all that sort of thing, and switch off all the lights, then I'm going to have more money to invest in the business now. And look, I know there are people who say to people of the younger generation, if you don't have so many Starbucks or whatever, you'll have more properties, which is a bit nonsensical, really. But you know, if you can achieve realistic cost savings in the short term and reinvest that money into the business, it will really pay off by the time you get to my age, 106.
No.
I don't look. They tell me I don't look a day over 105, but you know, I think
You
that
don't
just.
look a day older than me.
You're very kind, sir. You're very
Comments
kind.
in the box below, because I know out there we've had some comments that I look like Alan Partridge. It's not the first time it's been said. I've had it said over quite a number of years. So comments below. Who do we look like? And who
Yeah.
looks older, me or him? There you
Hey,
go.
now, demolition. Demolition, knocking stuff down. How on earth could that be a strategy? Well,
Well, of course it is.
perhaps, yeah, let me throw that one open then.
Come on. Well,
Or shall I?
where are you coming from?
So I'm coming from the point of view that you can have a piece of land which is worth more without that ugly pile of stuff on it than it would be with the ugly pile of stuff on it. The problem occurs when the cost of removing, and this might be more prevalent in the north of England the further you go, and I've had cases like this, where the cost of removing that ugly pile of stuff is actually worth more than the actual land upon which the ugly pile of stuff
Yeah,
resides, and
totally.
that can be a real issue. And sometimes the skids are under you, in that the ugly pile of stuff is causing access issues, or it's dangerous to whatever's next door and this kind of thing. So there might be a lot of pressure on you to actually do this, but
Or it hinders the vision of somebody to actually see the opportunity there.
absolutely. I mean, we might be talking about, I don't know, an end plot with a workshop or a garage or something there, which when removed would allow you to do backfill, not only to the back garden there, but a whole load of back gardens behind, and
Yeah.
put up 10 houses or whatever.
Yeah.
And by sweeping it aside, then suddenly there is that immediately visible uplift. Obviously, if you're coming in as a developer buying this thing, you hope that the owner hasn't done that, and then you'll be paying them a little bit less. But
Well,
that
it's
would be naughty.
very common with developers to actually buy a sacrificial plot, shall we call it, where you buy something, sacrifice it by demolishing it in order to gain the access there.
Absolutely
But
so.
we're recording this here in Northampton without giving away our geography of where we are, so don't come stalking us, please. And as you will probably recall, there used to be newspaper offices here in Northampton. It was a bog ugly building, shall we call it. And the newspaper sadly is no more because it compressed itself into other sites and the presses have moved elsewhere. But that was a monstrous site that they couldn't actually dispose of because everybody looked at it and went, it's an ugly site. So what happened is the freeholders demolished the site and made it a development site, which they then carved up. And we've got an Aldi supermarket, we've got some flats built, there's some other commercial premises on there, and car parking too. So it takes a little bit of vision, and also at the same time, roughly, we had the ugliest bus station in Britain here in Northampton. And that was demolished to create or make way for a new build site because people couldn't see beyond the ugly bus station, and therefore demolition had to take place in order to uplift the value of the site.
Yeah, it's because the people with the imagination and the 3D perception and this kind of thing, they're the architects, and they start with on paper the whole thing demolished, and they put up something magnificent. But
Yeah.
as you say, if there's the ugliest thing that you've ever seen on the actual site, it might put buyers off.
Totally.
So another time when you might demolish something is if you're paying business rates and it's some kind of big empty warehouse sort of building, and that happened a lot at the time of the credit crunch. I know then people would just bulldoze it as a pile of bricks. One of the big house builders, and I won't tell you which one, did something really scandalous at the time of the credit crunch. And this was one of the big names in the industry. And they said to their builders, here's what we want you to do. We want you to, the things that are in progress, and maybe there's 6 foot worth of building or whatever, we want you to demolish it. We want you to cart away all the detritus and all the stuff in skips and everything. We're not going to pay you, but if you don't, when the economy recovers, we won't work with you again. And I thought that was ever so naughty.
That's very scandalous.
That was
I mean,
ever
it's
so naughty.
almost as scandalous as something I read about this year in 2020 of another major house builder. And as part of their development, while they were building, they discovered Roman ruins, underground Roman baths
Wow.
and buildings. And if it wasn't for the lobbying of the local public to protect this ancient monument, they were planning on pouring concrete over and building houses on top, which would have been lost to society forever. So I'm not anti-development, but let's do it ethically and
Yes.
let's do it sustainably and let's create a positive environment for us all to live in.
Back in the
David.
1970s, when I was a youngster, on a similar note, there was this big Roman earthwork near where I grew up, which literally it was the outer defences of the town and everything.
Was that Rome?
Indeed, it was, and they were building a new estate right next to it. And what do? One day when nobody was looking, they bulldozed a big wide footpath going all the way through it.
That's not so good.
Which was ever so naughty. But even though I knew people in the council by the time I'd alerted them, and I was only about this high at the time, it was job done, and then they said, "Oh, sorry, slap wrist." And so we really should value our heritage.
Our heritage, absolutely. Well, David, we're at 21 minutes.
My goodness.
We've run out of time in today's episode, so we look forward to welcoming everybody back because I'm sure, based on how many A's, B's, and C's we did quite a number of videos. We've got another video coming up for D's next time.
I can feel one.
So have a delightful week without us, and we'll see you next Sunday.
D is my favourite, sorry to interrupt, letter of the alphabet, by the way. I don't know why.
Superb.
I guess yours would be A.
Oh, delightful. Absolutely. Delightful, David. Have a great week, everyone.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.